The defining underground movement of the modern rap landscape has to be the rise of emo and cloud rap, popularized and founded in the late 2000s and 2010s by the only two gods that actually matter, Lil B and Viper the Rapper. Now, you may think I'm making some sort of sick joke, but that would only mean that you're blind to the light. What I find most fascinating about cloud rap as a genre is that it's one of the first next to vaporwave and others to be formed and popularized by the internet, which would be a major influence into the modern sound of the genre, often trying to recreate the Y2K early internet aesthetic, creating these icy, futuristic soundscapes, which is why emo rap became the jam to cloud rap's peanut butter. Ironic and self-hating lyricism fit right into the production style typically present. The main exporter to this style of rap comes from the world's favorite producer of heated gamer moments, Sweden. The Sad Boys' most popular artist is easily Young Lean.
People. Popping pills like sits. It's like you pop pills like they were sits. While someone vomits on your mosquito tits. It's like lyrics.
But the world of Sad Boys is far more expansive than one might think, as a collective known as Drain Gang, and sorry to all the Lean fans, are far more interesting than him. The group members include Tyboy Digital Eco2K, who is my personal favorite of the group, and the leader, most popular artist, and the subject of this video, Bladee. Now, there are often two reactions to Bladee. The first is, all religion is nullified because the true and only God is already on this earth, and his name is Bladee. Or, I would rather smash my dick between a forming grill and endure 15 minutes of seething, unimaginable pain than to listen to another minute of Bladee. However, as a radical centrist, I don't really stand in either camp. I do find him highly enjoyable, but he has his testing moments. Despite such a short career, he has touched a lot of bays and made a lot of improvement. Plus, not to say this is what the mainstream will sound like in 20 years, but I can see him and his peers making a big splash retrospectively in the future. Like I said, he has quite a few projects out. I will be ranking his 3 albums and 3 mixtapes. He has 2 EPs, but I don't consider them core releases.
We interrupt this program to bring you a special report.
Actually, scratch that. I'm going to be having a friend of mine, Dolfo, be giving a quick review of AVP and Rip Bladee, and also give a quick history of Bladee in the only way I think is actually appropriate, faded as shit.
So Bladee make good music. It all started with a little song called Bleach, and it goes like da da da. And it's like, oh shit, this is good as fuck. And it echoes like all fresh and shit. Got the Fred Perry, got the head ninja ass. And he's like, yeah, all like Sweden accent and shit. And then 2014, and made Glue. It's the best album of all time. You ever heard the lead? He's like, bye bye. You know what I mean? So then after that, it's a very good album. The next one, it's like all like sad and shit. It's like Ever Since or some shit. Yeah, it's very good. It's a very good album. It's like pop 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 pop. And then he made Working on Dying, and he's like, I'm dying. Ah. And then he made Red Light, and he's like, I'm a goofy. It's so Nike. Okay, and then they made like Ice Dancer, and it's like, I'm an ice dancer, dancing on ice. It's also like AVP, and then Echoes on that shit. He's like, I'm a black boy. Ow. And then they all like got chemistry that's just like shit about hip hop bop. And then I don't know, it's good music. Rip Blade is good. Fucking ass.
So, I'll be ranking them worst to best, starting with Working on Dying. This record's hella mediocre. I personally just can't see it more than just a weird transitional moment in the discography. His typical producer, White Armor, isn't present, and he gives a production torch to Oogie Mane, but only for this record. He does a decent job at keeping the Blade style, but the album has a much deeper trap influence than per usual at this point in his career. I really can't complain too heavily though, because the beats are okay, but the mix is very iffy. Along with Bladee delivering quite a few weak, and if we're talking about the last track Best Buy, disastrous vocal performances. Most fans like this record, but I just can't get behind it. Red Light. Haha, yes, I too watch Anthony has the absolute gall to insult a fascist. Fantano. Yes, I do not enjoy the Bladee. He has the auto-tune, and he fucked my wife and made me watch. Indeed, this is his most well-known work amongst a majority of music listeners. While it's by no means his best work, and if we're going by the first couple tracks, this album is fucking ass. The production is extremely boring, with the same stock standard trap 808s burying many of Blade's stylistic staples, and Blade giving some tired performances. However, once you reach Obedient, which many fans say is the equivalent to their orgasm having an orgasm, the album really does pick up. A few more dud tracks, but overall, the album is an alright experience. Glue. Blade's first full project and widely loved by his fanbase. While it's certainly a strong debut that does establish him well as an artist, this is easily where he's at his most dick in between a form and grill. While some tracks are easily some of his best, the issue comes in the record length. This is a short tape, and any bad song or interruption is felt hard. The second track, Safe House, is a cluttered mess. Some of Blade's most annoying vocals, along with an extremely sloppy mix where the beat overpowers his voice. All smooth after that, however. The last track, Unreal, is an underwhelming ending. Getting over that weak start and finish, however, you have a fun record with some hard bobs. Blade opening tracks can be a mixed bag. When they're good, and when they're bad, they're unbearable. Fortunately, Delete is a spectacular intro, a smooth and futuristic alt R&B track, with Blade's layered crones being very powerful, along with the core of this album having some back-to-back bangers and strong features from the typical Drain Gang crew, and Bones. Glue is a sound that's now distant to Blade. He's taken a more braggadocio and faux sad aesthetic. Icy beats with strong R&B aesthetics are now much straighter rap. It still has a futuristic aesthetic, but it's warmed up a little. It's created a slight rift in his fan base, many preferring the pre-Ever Since sound. So I would say if you've just heard Red Light and nothing else, try this on. D&G. Say what you will, but this is the worst album cover Blade has put out, and he has some bad album covers. Another strange aspect of this record is that it's a Drain Gang collaborative album, hence the album title abbreviation, featuring equal input from Blade, Eco2K, and Typhoid Digital, whose work I'm not all that familiar with, along with some scattered young lead features, all bringing a special spice to the table. Like I've said earlier, I'm more partial to Echo's work, and I would talk more about his music if he officially released anything. He contributes some very sticky ambient pop flourishes like the second track Black Boy, along with some alt R&B and straight cloud rap tracks like GTR. Funnily enough, most of Echo's contributions were featured on his unreleased opus, Beauty Sleep. Blade sticks to his usual shtick, but it's an effective formula. Beats sound like extras off Ever Since, but the production off that is so immaculate I can't even use that like a diss. Plus, while Ever Since was straight sad, D&G leans to melancholy with some sweeter production thrown in to offset the croning. Thai Boy's the weak link though. He's not bad, but he sort of feels like a mixture of Blade and Nico, but never really capturing either of their strengths. Sort of just a hodgepodge of sad boy traits. He rides well in the lane he's set in, but when he comes on, I always think it's one of the other two. Another issue I have is just the length. I can't pick you a bad song, but the album does feel a little overloaded and maybe some things could be cut. Because near the end, it becomes a hazy kaleidoscope of sad boy tropes. It's still a good record with no real distinctive bad moments to make it a worthwhile experience. Ever Since, the big one, the album, humanity's crowning cultural artistic achievement. All history has led to this moment. From the inception of reality and matter, this is what all existence was supposed to lead to. Humanity has finally found perfection. Yeah, it's pretty fucking alright. Generally regarded as his best work, Ever Since really is king shit within the realm of emo rap. While I don't think I can understand why someone would rank this as their favorite album of all time outside someone just really liking the vibe, I do think I can finally understand why this is so beloved within its circle. Generally, no one is making this music, and no one will until the 2000s come into the mainstream nostalgia the way the 80s and 90s are now. I mean really in the mainstream, like you have Stranger Things, but it's happening inside the music video for No Scrubs. Despite often toying with depressive themes and cold sounds, it's been nothing more than that, toying, a vibe floating in the background. Ever Since buckles down and goes into these themes and sounds hard. Looking critically, the songwriting is fucking atrocious, and I've always had a disdain for artists using depression and suicide as just a cheap coding to fish for relatability. Is Blade actually depressed? Fuck if I know. He hides behind so many layers of irony that it's hard to spot. Hey, me again. Going back to the video, I realized just how douchey that comment sounds. It was by no means my intent to question the legitimacy of his mental health, just that it was hard for me as a listener to understand where he was coming from, since his whole brand is literally built around being a sad boy. So the difference between him just fucking around and being completely earnest was, again, hard for me to personally recognize. I hope I better clarified myself. It wasn't my intent to offend. Okay, back to the video. However, the big hypocritical but of this is that Blade never really rubbed me the wrong way in this regard. It never feels like he's trying to fish for anything from the audience, and he's just writing what sounds best in his head. Production-wise, everything is what you've come to expect at this point, but Wyatt Armour just might be the most slept-on producer working right now because just about everything he touches turns into the freshest shit you will ever hear, like sucking on a mint, brushing your teeth, and taking a big swig of water. Who Goes There might be a perfect song. No exaggeration. It's a perfect ometer that is extremely catchy with a bonkers instrumental. Plus, Blade does actually deliver some great lines. It's certainly auto-tune central, and I wasn't too fond of it the first time. Hell, the whole album I wasn't fond of. But Who Goes There isn't just an earworm, it's a fucking ear snake. So What through X'd Out are just slammer after slammer, with the track Romeo almost sounding like an Owl City instrumental in a good nostalgic way. Then you get to Sick, which is easily one of Blade's worst songs to date. The instrumental is quite okay, but Blade's performance is just so annoying, and despite only being 3 minutes, it feels like 8. Every time I come back to this album, I have to skip it. Sometimes I'll go, okay, maybe I'll give it another chance, and then automatically regret it. It's a massive stain and keeps me from saying this is his best work. After that, the album's good again, though. While maybe a little less slammy, because I've never really been a fan of Eco's verse on Blood Veil and Wrist Cry is so badly written, it's hard to look over. The album ends on a strong note, though, with Skin. Maybe a little cheesy, but it feels like the most genuine moment on the album, with a raw guitar sample playing, which, I guess looking now, is poetic. A cleanly made album with cold synths and auto-tune, ending on the only real instrument on the whole album. Ice Dancer. If Ever Since was a dingy, dark, and cold dystopia, Ice Dancer is a bright future filled with consumerist greed and mega malls. Somehow, a record this bloated, taking heavy influence from Red Light, is my favorite record of his. Now, while I would prefer Blades continuing down the Ever Since path of short but impactful records, if he's gonna release more records of this consistent quality, Then I say let him keep going. A lot of songs are quite brief, so if one idea doesn't stick, chances are you're moving on to a new one very briefly. Blade villainy, if you will. In terms of features, his album is pretty sparse with them compared to many of his other works. Young Meat has an alright verse, and Tyboy Digital has a gorgeous chorus on Side by Side, making that track another great standout. Waster is a strange moment. The beat sounds like it was slightly just reworked from Be Nice to Me, but it has enough to separate it alongside with a nice vocal performance from Blade. The second to final track, Anything, has Blade performing with a great flow, which I wouldn't say is his strength typically, showing once more he's a god at writing a fucking chorus. Moving on, the final track, which comes out of nowhere and surprised me on my first listen, it can be compared to Skins off Ever Since. The Silent Boy Cries is a short track admittedly, but it's a poignant closer. A beautiful vocal sample jittering and cascading across this icy landscape, leaving the album off on one last melancholic note. Well, Ever Since is a more compressed record, and I still play it more often for its more automatic opener and brisker length and track list, Ice Dancer shows Blade at his peak though. He's had an issue keeping an album consistently enjoyable and keeping me interested to the end, but there are plenty of cuts from the beginning, middle, and end of this album I could pull out. The minimal use of features shows his growth as an artist too, not needing to rely on others to keep his project fresh for a whole run. Sure, you can point to Red Light and its similar lack of features, but Blade did have difficulty keeping me interested for that whole album. He experiments with his formula along with offering up some of his best productions since Ever Since. This is a great album, and while I don't think I could suggest Blade to anyone as his style is so niche and easy to hate for most people, so I'll say if you like both 1000 Gex and 808s and Heartbreaks, you might have the tolerance for him. So yeah, good night. Red alert, red alert. New album came out as I was recording this. Quick thoughts on Trash Island. It's, yeah, pretty good. 7 out of 10. Echoes of God. Tyboy did good, and I could talk about Legendary Member, which came out too. I didn't like it, but and yeah, and it's Blade, doing his normal shit. I think some of the production's pretty weak in the first half, but gets pretty good near the end. Yeah, uh, uh, yeah, for real. Good night.